All right, so now we are on Unit 1.8, and this one is asking who. We're going to be describing people or clothing or trying some way of narrowing down who we're talking about. Handy skill. Right, so to start with, again, I'll put the thing in there. The goal at the end of this unit is to be able to have this simple conversation. Someone asks, figure spells a name, says, who is this person? And the other person can figure out who it is and not just point at them, but be able to describe them somehow, give a brief description, and then point to a glance to the person. And then the other person repeats the information and checks it. So you'll have a conversation with yourself at some point. Now, in the past, this was a little bit easier to discuss, but now as the concept of gender has been changing, this section is actually much more complicated to talk about, because how a person presents themselves may not be what we assume is gender or their identity. So I'll encourage you not to make assumptions on the part of somebody else and what their preferences are. So if someone has told you, in deaf culture, people tend to be a bit more blunt. It comes out of the lack of communication that a lot of deaf people experienced growing up, where they were never given full information about things because their families generally didn't sign. So they were always sort of left in the dark. I'll tell you later. It's not important. Don't worry about it. So within deaf communities, especially at the schools for the deaf, they would tell each other information rather bluntly. If someone got sick, went to the doctors, and was able to work with an interpreter and understand what was going on, then they would bring that back to the school and say, hey, this is what happened to me. If this ever happens to you, it's probably this. So communication within the deaf community was really important. So oftentimes talking about health issues, things that hearing people tend to be a lot more leery about discussing. Deaf people would be very open about. And we'll tell stories once you know me better. Everybody has stories of, as a hearing person, I went, I wasn't expecting people to get quite that graphic about something. But it's also a very visual language, obviously. So when we describe something in ASL, we're showing it or doing it. And that can be a bit much for a hearing person who is, I was going to sign goody two shoes. If you're not used to discussing harsh topics bluntly, although you're on Facebook, whatever. So all that said, when we start, it used to be really easy. We would talk about gender: man, woman, male, female, boy, girl. Now it's a little bit more, it's a more sensitive issue, and I think rightly so. So it's not appropriate to just assume someone is a man or a woman. And I'll introduce those signs. And these are, again, straight from the book. So man, the male half of the head is the top. Ostensibly, it comes from hats with brims. And then women down the jawline, lower half of the face, from like bonnet straps. That's assumed to be the root of where those signs come from. But you will also see that the sign for father is up on the top half of the head, and mother is in the lower half. So we will use those locations: male cousin, female cousin. So male, female. So man, and it drops down to here. So man, it's the 5-hand shape. Sometimes you'll see people do this. It's a rather older version. Signs kind of drift in how they're pronounced. So if it changes hand shape during the course of it, oftentimes that will be one of the first things that changes. It will become just a single hand shape. So man and woman. You'll notice that I've started to drop the number of GIFs that I put in the PowerPoints. I'm noticing that it's causing the video to have problems. So I'd rather, I'm probably going to try to keep them down as we move further and we get more and more vocab. So during the PowerPoint, we may not even have GIFs at some point. And then I'll put them in when I publish the actual PowerPoint. So we have man and woman. So woman is from the chin, from the jaw, woman. So it's the same action as man. We talked about the parameters in that introductory video. The difference is the location, where it starts. That's the only thing that changes between the two. Person is this. So it's a good generic, oh, that person over there. We also tag this onto an activity to make a person who does that activity. So a writer, a teacher, actor. So this is person. And then before we get into describing clothing or hair or appearance, I want to do the colors first because those will be the most useful. We have boring signs. I call them boring because they're all like a placeholder. They're all the same sign. You just change the hand shape, change the letter. So blue, green, purple, and yellow are all similar. We have blue, green, purple, and yellow. Notice blue, green, purple, yellow. B, green, G, purple, P, yellow. And all we're doing is twisting it. Hang loose. Yellow, green, purple. So those are kind of boring. They're easily confused. You just have to remember the initial letter. Purple. No. These are much more fun. And I say fun, meaning they're not really fun. They are just more iconic, a little easier to remember. Red and pink, I always think lips or lipstick. Red. Index finger, sometimes you'll see an R. Where ASL is drifting away from initialized signs, which is putting the letter at the beginning. By doing that, it's much more English, and we're trying to get away. The culture as a whole is trying to get away from that. So you'll see red, index finger, red, red. Pink is similar, it's just with a P. Pink, pink. And there's pink. No exclamation point. Orange, it's like the fruit, right? You're squeezing an orange. Not that we drink orange juice that way, I suppose. I have seen the thing where you can plug it, you can push that little spout in and then squeeze. But I don't think I would do this because I think, knowing me, it would go all over. Anyway, so orange, you just sort of pump that fist right in front of your mouth. Black, just index finger goes across the forehead. Brown, a B hand shape goes down the side of the head. Whichever hand you're dominant, don't cross over. Same side, brown. It just comes down once, don't repeat it. If you repeat it, it's much closer to the sign for beer, which is down by the jaw. But brown, once. White, think of white t-shirt, simple white shirt, and it's the 5-hand shape, and it comes into like the fingertips together. White. Gray is half and half, right? Half black, half white. So gray. Mix equal parts of paint, you get gray. So gray. Now we can get to clothing. So we got some basic colors. If you want chartreuse, you're on your own. So Shirt, right? My favorite hoodie. Shorts, hard to see in this camera angle, but basically you just brush your fingertips along your thighs at shorts level, where the shorts hemline is. So shorts or shorts. Right? Either one works. There are two ways to sign pants. On the East Coast, we tend to sign pants. This leg, pants. The textbook is San Francisco based, so they tend to use the West Coast, which is like that, like you're pulling up your pants. So boom, boom, or boom, boom. So either way works, whichever one you like, whichever way you feel more comfortable. It depends on the community you're in. If everybody uses this, you use this. In Ohio, we tend to do pants. Ohio tends to be very Rochester, Washington, D.C. sign, as opposed to West Coast. Glasses. You can also be more specific in how the glasses are, but for right now, just the generic sign for glasses. And you can do it one-handed. Shoes. 2 S's and you just bump them together. Shoes. And again, these are generic signs for groups of clothing. Hat. Dress. Jacket. Put on a jacket. Skirt. So kind of like we did dress, where it comes the whole length. Skirt's just the second half of it, so just the lower half. Skirt. So those are generic categories of clothing. Now some facial hair descriptors. So you've got mustache, of which I had one, and beard. Then, last of all, the irony of him signing hair. He doesn't have just thin, very short, close cut. Mine is at that point where it's just going crazy. So I apologize. You're going to be watching. This side never stays down, and this side never goes up. So I always look like I'm off kilter. Anyway, hair. Just reach up and grab some. If you don't have any, just hair. We'll get into hairstyles and how to describe hair at a later date. But for right now, that's all you need. So now you could describe a person. So if I said, right? Hello, Grayson. Okay, Grayson. Okay. I'm in the middle of teaching here. Could you, no, don't present your butt to the class. Come here. Come over here. Yeah, come over here. Good. Okay. So, sorry about that. So I could say, no, stay here. So Larry who, right? Or this is the sign for where. No, stay over here. And then you could identify, if you know, man with the hair, glasses, blue shirt over there. And then you could do the second half of the conversation. Man, glasses, hair, blue shirt over there. Yes. Okay. So this is a thing I would say, pull up a picture on Facebook. Individual, simple picture of someone and say, okay, and then point to the screen. Just to practice thinking of those things and pretty common ideas together. If you sign them a few times, it will become more natural. One of the hard things with transitioning from English to ASL is in English we have a tendency of thinking up here, right? We'll practice it in our head. Or even, okay, well, if I could do it, I can sign that. Even talking to ourselves. That doesn't help with sign. With sign, you literally have to do it. You have to do it with your hands. If you don't, your body's not going to remember. It's a kinesthetic memory. You've got to sign it in order to practice it. With my upper division classes, I'm teaching ASL literature, and students will be translating poems or creating new poems, and they'll be doing it up here. And the moment they try to do it with their hands, it's as if they've done no work whatsoever. The opposite of that is there are times where you can just let your hands play and try to create images, and all of a sudden an image will pop up and you're like, whoa, I would never have thought about doing that, but my hands did it for me. So it reminds me of conversations with puppeteers, and they talk about how they'll be doing a show, and all of a sudden the puppet will do something it's never done before. They didn't think of it. The puppet did it. And so the puppeteer's like, oh boy. One friend who works at medieval fairs has a very foul-mouthed puppet. The puppet can say things that he can't say. As a matter of fact, he tried. He did his whole show without the puppet and got lots of complaints for being inappropriate and making comments at people. But the puppet can say things and people just laugh it off. So as you start playing with signs, as you get more and more proficient, your hands will produce meaning that you didn't necessarily intend. And that's a great thing. It's like sometimes you say things, you'll say something spontaneously that you didn't intend. That's exactly what you meant, but you had never thought about it in those terms before or with those words. So that said, long story short, practice on your hands. If you feel self-conscious about it, I don't know what to say. Find a corner alone and practice. I did it a lot while driving, where sitting at a red light or while driving on the highway, I would practice my finger spelling. I would practice signing with one hand. Be safe. But you have to practice all this stuff in the hand and with facial expressions. The whole package has got to be there. If you practice one piece without the other, it'll be harder to put them together later. So here's all the vocab, and the only thing I don't have in here, what did I add? Oh, clothing. And that's in the vocab, I just haven't talked about it yet, clothing. And it's just a generic sign for what's covering your body, right? Clothing. Okay. And then I included some other videos or other GIFs of all the same vocab. And I will add the video of all of the video clips from this chapter. So that's it. That's 1.8. It's a pretty easy unit. It's a lot more vocab, and you'll notice with each successive unit, we're going to get a lot more vocab. So just to be prepared, this is going to be a lot of you just repeating stuff and practicing it till your hands, till it feels natural and you don't have to think about it. If you have any specific questions, let me know. Awesome. Moving on to 1.9.